Tell us your mentality, man, about playing offensive tackle. I mean, you have the potential, just to be absolutely elite.
Dev, go ahead and share your thoughts on the thesis.
Yeah, baby. That's what we do. We are the Buckeyes. What up, Buckeye Nation? What up, Buckeye Nation? Welcome to the Buckeye Boys, where we talk college football with real fans. I'm Devin. Excited to be here tonight, man. Got a good show planned for you guys with a special guest. As you know, here on the Buckeye Boys, we bring recruits, current players, past players on here, man, all Buckeye related. So it should be a fun night. You guys know what to do before we get rocking and rolling. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button as well, please. It's a good night for Super Chats, man. If you want to ask our special guests some questions, get them put in the Super Chat. They all go to our Pay It Forward, as you guys know. And if you're listening on Spreaker or Apple Podcasts, shoot us a like or a save or whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing. And as always, head on over to the Scoop message board. If you're not part of it, I encourage you to join now. But we're going to be talking a little bit of past, a little bit of present, and might even throw in a little bit of future in this show. Let me bring on VB Coach here. We know him. He's been around, but everybody welcome our special guest, former Buckeye, Jamie Sumner. Jamie, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, for sure. VB Coach, what's up, bro?
Not much. Just looking forward to hearing some stories tonight.
Yeah. Me as well, obviously. Before the show got going, we were having a little bit of conversation behind the scenes here. And just based off that conversation, if you are a Buckeye fan, you are going to enjoy some of these stories we're about to hear tonight. So, Jamie, you played for Ohio State, very successful starter for 2 years there. You played beside and with some other very popular Buckeyes, but something had to get you there. You got to have a story before that, man. And as I said before the show started, you told me that story. I was very intrigued by it. So tell the listeners, man, how did you wind up at Ohio State in the first place?
And I'll even back up a little bit past what we talked about. So in high school, after my junior year, great junior season, I'm top recruit in the country, getting a lot of Division I love. Senior year rolls around, everybody wants to have a great senior year. We go 1-8, and all the Division I schools are, ghosting me. They didn't call it ghosting then, but they weren't returning phone calls. No scholarship offers. There was no anything. Some Division II schools that offered some money. And I had a coach that, really looking back on it, changed my life. He just said, "Hey, listen, what's your dream school? Where do you want to go to school?" And I told him at that time, and don't shoot me for this, my dream school was Oklahoma. And I just said, I'm going to go to OU. And he said, well, if you come to junior college, you can make that happen. And so I spent 2 years in junior college at Coffeyville Community College, which Ohio State had Ron Springs come from there. So I kind of had seen his picture on the wall and kind of knew his story and some things like that. So they came in and recruited me, and it came down to how do you say no to Ohio State, right? I mean, even early mid '90s. I mean, the name spoke for itself. I remembered watching Ohio State games versus that ugly school from up north with my dad and my grandfather. So when I was a kid, so there was a lot that drew me there. My coaches had a relationship with Coach Cooper and a couple of the other coaches. So ended up coming, and man, again, like we talked about, I go from 0 offers out of high school to going to a top. I feel like I'm, obviously I'm a little biased, but I feel like it's the best program in the country. After 2 years, and so from there, just what a run. Like I told you, offline doesn't seem real sometimes. Still seems kind of like a storybook, just because so much happened in those 2 years. And also, to be honest, I feel a little cheated. I would have given anything to be there for 5 years, but 2 was. I got a lot out of 2 years for sure. I got to play with some great guys, like you said, and that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. VB coach, you got anything to that, or you want me to keep rolling?
Well, one question I had for him was, what was that transition like? Because when you mentioned here in Ohio, we don't have any JUCOs.
Correct.
There's no JUCOs in Kentucky, Indiana, Michigan, or Pennsylvania. It is not something that is, I don't have players go to JUCOs.
Right.
So, anytime Ohio State got one, it was such a unknown, I guess is what I would say. So, talk about what it was like playing there. And Coffeyville was a premier program. Like, I think there's different levels of JUCO, and that's the elite level. Talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. And so again, they, a couple of things lined up. The Big Ten changed the rule, like I think in '92, maybe early '93, they changed the rule where you didn't have to redshirt if you came from junior college. You could play immediately. So that kind of changed everybody's recruiting philosophies. As far as the competition level and some of that stuff, the Kansas, what's called the Kansas Jayhawk Conference, they've been putting kids into Division I programs for decades. So from a competition standpoint and who I was playing against on Saturdays, I was getting good competition on Saturdays for 2 seasons that if I would have been at an Ohio State or an OU or somewhere, I'd have been redshirted. I mean, that's just the reality. I wouldn't have been playing. So, as far as that goes, I mean, great competition. I played against the guys that went all over the place. I mean, I played against probably, I don't know, I would say 20 to 25 guys just my sophomore season that ended up at big time Division I schools. So again, from a competition standpoint, there's nothing better. Obviously there's a transition, right? Just like anything, there was a step up. I'm playing against the Matt Finkuses, the Luke Fickles, the Mike Vrabels of the world, the Greg Belisaris. I mean, guys like that are lined up across from now. There wasn't 11 of those guys in junior college, but for the most part, it wasn't a huge transition. I think that some of probably the biggest challenge is what you said. If I'm being honest, looking at it now from my standpoint, people from Ohio had no clue what a junior college was. Right. And I had so many people go, is that like a prep? Like when I would tell them, they're like, is that like a prep school? No, it's not like a prep school. The years count, and there's some things, there's some very distinct differences. So there was that. There was, Ohio State. I think the last guy that had came in was a linebacker that lasted 2 days of spring ball from junior college. He lasted got in, lasted 2 days, and then transferred out and ended up going to Cal. I can't remember his name, but that was who they were. Are you going to be like him? And there was a lot of those kinds of comments, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So, there's some of that stuff, right, where just people don't know. And honestly, there was plenty of times where I'm going back to my dorm and going, am I really good enough? I did okay my first spring and first season, but there was some moments where it was like, maybe this is too big for me. Maybe this, maybe I'm not meant for this. Maybe I'm not who I think I am as a player and those kinds of things. So there was some challenges for sure. From an academic standpoint, it's a lot different. A big junior college class is probably 25 people, 30 people. And, if you've ever been to a classroom at Ohio State, you walk into an auditorium and there's 400, in a 100 level, 200 level, lecture hall. So there's some things like that, and then quite frankly, being I'm from Kansas, my junior college was about a 2-hour drive to my house. So there was times, I could run home if I was homesick or I wanted a home cooked meal or just wanted to go see my mom and dad. It was a quick drive to go see them. Well, now I'm 900 miles away. It's I can't get home every weekend. Those kinds of things. Just with some challenges and some things that presented, lack of a better phrase, I had to grow up really quick, and I did. But there were some times, like I said, where I was just like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have came. maybe this was a bad decision, but it worked out for sure.
Yeah, Jamie, if you were playing football these days, I'm pretty sure you can get away with playing 4 years of JUCO and then maybe getting 5 years of Division I ball. But on those same lines, man, I love hearing your story because for those of you guys that watch the channel, I'm big into recruiting, and that I get pretty harsh on these recruiting services sometimes because of the amount of weight that is put on these rankings. And hearing your story of, no offers, having to go to JUCO, go that route, and you end up coming and starting for the Buckeyes for 2 years. So kind of an example right there that shows that these recruiting rankings, they don't mean everything. I'm not saying it's the recruiting service's fault that there's so much emphasis put on that these days, but for those players listening, parents listening, all those people, they don't, just because you're not on their radar does not mean you can't play at your dream school. And you are a perfect example of that, man, here in that story. So kind of speak to that a little bit, and tell a little bit of people about what you're doing now and why you're able to speak to that. The fact that recruiting rankings don't mean anything. Obviously, you have the experience of playing at the college level, but what are you up to now that might give you some, some knowledge into this college football game we got going on right now?
Yeah, so the other thing I would hit on too is just the rankings and all that stuff are great for social media, and we live in that world and that society, right? But at the end of the day, you have to go out and get on the field, and you have to compete against guys, and you have to be willing to bet on yourself and work and do those kinds of things, right? And I think that's the piece that gets lost a lot of times is, hey, those rankings are great, but when it's Saturday afternoon or it's Wednesday afternoon at the Woody, I mean, that stuff matters none, and you have to show it every day. And so, that would be the other thing I would throw in. As far as nowadays, I coach high school football here in Owasso, Oklahoma. It's a suburb right outside of Tulsa. We're fortunate and very, very successful high school program here. 2 state championships since 2017. Played for it either 3 or 4 other times. I've been in the semis a bunch of times. So, and it's the highest class here in Oklahoma. So, the other thing, we had a name that you guys may remember, Josh Proctor, that played safety for Ohio State, is actually from Owasso as well. He was on the coaching staff last year. It felt good to be around a fellow Buckeye every day because, like I said, I think I told you guys offline, there's plenty of Sooner stuff and Cowboys stuff out here, but having another Buckeye there was fun. Just fun trading stories. And we're quite a bit different in age, but just some of the stories were a lot, there's a lot of similarity between our experiences. So, but yeah, I mean, the recruiting now, the other thing that's really, I don't think parents and kids realize that it's competitive. I mean, there's no missteps. They're not looking for a reason to sign you. They're looking for a reason to take you off the list. And they're looking for a reason to move on to the next guy. And they're looking for flaws or chinks in your armor or however you want to say it. And so that's the first thing. The other thing is, you hear a lot of numbers. We're in an NIL world. We're in a pay. You hear all these crazy numbers. That's not everybody's experience. I mean, that's not. We're fortunate in that a lot of D1 guys come from this program. Know the area. There's a lot of D1 guys that come from this area. The numbers that are getting thrown around, that's not normal for everyone. And I think that's the piece that gets lost sometimes. Is it's I don't want to say get rich quick scheme, but it's like parents hear that, kids hear that, and then they go on visits, and it's like, well, you offered me X dollars, over the phone, but now that we're face to face, you're telling me that the offer is going to be this. And I think more than ever, people need to understand that it's a business. It's a game on Saturdays for about 3.5 hours, but the rest of the time it's a business, and you have to protect yourself as such, and you have to go about it as such. I tell our kids, and again, I'm just a small piece of our program, but the kids that that ask me some for advice, I just told them, hey, listen, it's you incorporated from here on out. Whatever your decisions are, you have to make a business decision, and that's probably not popular. And I'm an old timer. I'm from a generation of loyalty and all those kinds of things, but the reality is, and the other piece of it, I'll say this, is that kids, we've had some kids in some coaching change situations at the Division I level that those kids were basically told, hey, you're not, we don't have a place for you. We no longer have a scholarship for you. And so, again, I think that the biggest thing I would challenge kids and challenge parents to know is just that this is a business now. We all want to, I say we all, a lot of people want athletes to be paid and those kinds of things. Well, that comes with a different set of responsibilities and circumstances. And one of them is it's a business, and you can be, it's kind of like, you show up to work someday and they fire you. Well, it's pretty much the same thing in college football now. They're paying too much money, too much money on the line. So that's just, in a nutshell. And again, I probably talked too long, but that's what I see at this level and some of the things that we ran into with our kids here.
Yeah. VB, before you jump in here, just a relevant super chat. Jamie jumped in here. Austin Spears dropped us a $20 super chat. Thanks for that. He said, "It's awesome to see an Okie on a Buckeye channel. I'm from Oklahoma and live in," how do you say that again?
Talaqua.
Talqua?
Yeah.
Talaqua. Go Bucks. Tell Coach Petite hello.
So Coach Poteet is he's our tight ends coach. He's a Tahlequah boy. Grew up there, went to school at Northeastern State, which is a Division II school there, played there. And he's our, again, like I said, he's our assistant head coach and great guy. My son actually played for him and loved him. So yeah, I'll make sure and pass that along. He'll get a kick out of that for sure.
Yeah.
You brought up, Jamie, you brought up about you guys there at the high school you're at has kids that go off to play D1 football. A lot of kids. I think you got about the last 4 years. There's been at least 3 go off to D1. But it's here we all know about Ohio State. But what is NIL like for a kid that's at a Tulsa, at an Oklahoma State, at a Missouri, Kansas State, place like that? What are you seeing in regards to that?
So, out here, it's anywhere from, as far as dollar amount, it's anywhere from, we have kids that have made from 50,000, let's just say 50,000 to keep the numbers simple and not, keep them rounded. Let's just say 50,000 a year up to 475,000. But with most of those kids, and again, this is the other thing that, again, I feel like I need to hit this again for parents or anybody that's out there is that's a lot of money. We all know. I mean, if you're an adult, you realize, man, that's a boatload of money and that's a blessing. But the numbers that were originally thrown out for some of those kids were completely different originally. The other thing was, we had kids that, and they're talented kids, were offered, hey, you have a scholarship to ABC University for $850,000. When it came to pass, now that offer isn't good anymore. And it's like, it's kind of like the coupon expired. I mean, it's kind of like, well, what do you mean? Yeah, like that's where I struggle. Is I'm from an era where, hey, if they offered you a scholarship, you had a scholarship, right, until they put you on the spot and they had to move on. But nowadays, it's like they can make social media posts and they can do all this stuff, and then it ends up passing, and the money's completely different. And you're talking about, and again, I think shame on college football in some aspects because and I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth because I just said it was a business, but they're also, in a lot of cases, colleges are, and the collectives are playing on kids who don't have business sense. And so they think that, hey, that adult told me XYZ is going to happen, so XYZ is going to happen. Well, that's not, once you take that much money and you bring that money involved in some of those things, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So it's sad to me to see kids make decisions and it's no longer, that's not really what's happening. I hate, we have, like I said, we have some kids go through some coaching changes and have some bad things happen with their offers being pulled. And we had other kids that were at schools with coaching changes that were told, hey, your services are no longer needed. That's horrible. 18, 19, 20 years. I don't know. Like we talked about a little bit offline, I know how my experience was. It was great. I can't imagine the reverse, which is that experience. Hey, we no longer need you. I mean, it should be the happiest time of your life, and you're scrambling trying to find, and we all know how the portal is. There's 35% of all scholarship kids are in the portal, and it's like you're fighting against. You're basically, you're fighting against so many other kids. It's sad to me. Some of those pieces are sad to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jamie, kind of.
Go ahead.
Jamie, kind of on that note a little bit, man, obviously there's a lot of discussion going around about today's college football. I mean, the president had a meeting the other day and is going to sign an executive order, and they're trying to pass the SCORE Act and all these things. But from a fan standpoint, where I'm very passionate about it, like when you look back at the days that you played, I mean, even as a fan before NIL, before this transfer portal really kind of blew up, like when I watch college football, I watch the players from their freshman to their senior year, and in those moments, those student athletes, I mean, not just football, but all across America, student athletes in the college program, I think that's a pivotal time in their life when they learn loyalty, responsibility, they learn how to handle failure, they learn all that. And before I say this next piece, you kind of hit on it when, like, those college kids that are getting offered these huge offers, those are rare. Like, those don't happen as much as we have the other side of the coin where there's lower, kids getting paid less. Well, it's kind of in the same sense. Well, when you see these stories about schools getting sued and players getting sued and players transferring to their seventh different school, playing 8 years, and switching schools to the highest dollar, like, for the most part, I would say 95% of college students are still getting those life lessons, are still getting those things that you kind of got when you were in there, when you were in playing college football. But obviously there's still some things to today's system that seem a little bit off. There's zero accountability. Anybody can be an agent. I'm not saying it's much as I don't think it's the players' fault necessarily. It's the adults. It's the supposed adults that are supposed to be in the room, putting these kids before everything. And now money is being put before everything. But kind of dive into that a little bit. Give us your thoughts on the landscape of college football anymore, and maybe bring up a little bit of your experience to tie into what's changed and why is it bad? You know what I'm saying? Or why is it good?
Sure. No, and here's the deal. Make no mistake about it. I think I said this just a minute ago, but I am not against players being paid one bit. Even when I was in school, the amount of money that we were given, scholarship athletes we were given to live off campus was below the poverty line. I mean, you had to make some hard decisions, and luckily I had some parents, that could send me money and some things like that. But, so I'm not against players getting paid. I think the problem is the amount of money we're talking about, we just went too far, right? The toothpaste is out of the tube at this point. I think they can put it back. I think it's going to be really hard. I think it's going to be tough. The other thing is I think we're seeing in the best. Some of the athletes that are being produced now are unreal. Some of the kids that are coming up, the ability to learn the game at a younger age, all those things should be making a better product on Saturday afternoons. I'm not sure we're seeing that because kids can't develop, like you said. Hey, kids used to come into Ohio State as a freshman, and they may have they may redshirt as a freshman, they may play special teams as a sophomore, or as a redshirt freshman. Their sophomore year, they're a rotational guy. And the junior and senior year, man, they're unstoppable and they're all Americans. And you just don't see that anymore. By that kid's second year, if he didn't get to play or he redshirted and didn't think he should, he's going somewhere else. And so that's the thing that I don't like. I think you have, from the coaching side of it, from the player side of it, I think you struggle from the development side. Money wise, the amount of money that's being thrown around, I would be scared as a coach to throw money at some of these kids because they still haven't played. I mean, you're poor, just look at the number of kids, and I obviously pay attention to the offensive line stuff, but I think we lost five linemen at Ohio State this year. And I'm sure none of those guys left for less money, so they're getting more money, which is good for them. But I just think there's some things like that have polluted the system. I don't think I'm going to be curious what they roll out for being the way to get it back in line. That's going to be my biggest. I'm really curious to see how that looks. I know what they've said, but what does that look like in the end? Again, I'm not for. If they can make money. I just think we've went way too far the wrong way. And to your point, there's no guardrails. You tell me one rule. Well, the collectives are involved. Okay, well, what does that mean? The collectives. You can be a street agent. That's the other thing is. I posted this the other day on social media. I'm not listening to anybody. In my life, I'm not going to listen to anybody that hasn't done. Like, if I ask you about going to the military, if you haven't been in the military, what are you going to tell me about being in the military? What you've read in the book or what you've read on, or seen in the movie. You don't know. And so that's my thing with some of these kids is like, who are you getting advice from? Who are you taking advice from? Because to your point, street agents are involved. There's people, 7-on-7 coaches. There's just a lot of things that kids are getting bad advice. And that's what I hate about this whole system. That's really my biggest beef or complaint is just that kids are getting bad advice about how to go about setting. I mean, in some instances, kids should come out of college and be retired. If you think about it, they should make enough money when they're in college that they can be retired. That's my opinion. Some of these guys, they should never have to work again, or create opportunities for themselves that, you know, business-wise, they're not working for somebody. They're starting their own businesses, doing their own things. Some of those things, and I just hope that's. I know Ohio State's done some stuff with that, trying to help help the student athletes with that. But again, I just think we're too far. I don't know how we rein it back in without, you know. I'm curious to see how that goes. Hopefully, that answers the question.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely did, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot about what we just talked about the other night with Duke. We had Riley Pettijohn's dad on talking to him, and he was talking about the non-licensed agents and reaching out to kids. And I've already had a situation with a former player similar to that where they talked the kid into entering the portal, and it just became the most messed up situation in the world. And that's where, and like you said, Dev, you know, we keep talking about the kids. I keep reading all kinds of comments, you know, oh, I can't believe these kids are making this much money and blah, blah, blah. And someone that's, you know, same age as Jamie, where I used to, if I had $4, I needed to find another dude that had $4 so that we could get pizza and breadsticks from Papa John's. Like, and that could be my dinner on a Saturday night. And, you know, living it that way too, I can't imagine being in a meeting room and the dude next to me is getting $450,000. Like, I just cannot grasp that, comprehend it, nothing. Like, I don't even know how that works. So I have players that are in it and I'm trying to learn it, but the rules keep changing. And it's not that they keep changing. It's kind of what Jamie said. There are no rules. And then a rule pops up and I'm like, okay, well, who's enforcing that rule? Okay, that's a rule. Who's enforcing it? And we just don't know. I said the other night with Duke on here, it's the wild, wild west, man. It's, you know, and I think and again, this shows my age. We're starting to see schools who, when I would grow up watching college football, were these national powerhouses, and they got their hands smacked, and one, you know, SMU got smacked hard, and we haven't heard from those schools as far as national prominence. On the football stage, competing for national titles. And now all of a sudden, Texas Tech is a school that's getting the elite recruits. And I remember saying, this is what's going to happen, you know, and we're here now. So
yeah, I think kids, the other thing is, and obviously the money has changed it some, but I think we're also in an era where kids don't understand, and maybe it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying there's a generation now of kids that they don't understand history in college football. Because, like, to your point, the Texas Techs of the world are now at the top, or they're headed that way, right?
Yeah.
Indiana.
Indiana. I mean, who would have ever thought, right? But there's some of that stuff where, you know, when I coached in junior college, I actually coached at Coffeyville. We didn't talk about that, but I went back and coached, and I had a kid that he played for me, was an All-American. And all these schools are recruiting him, and he didn't want to take a visit to Alabama. You know, this was right before Saban got there, and he was like, "Coach, Alabama sucks." And I'm like, "Do you understand what you like? You have no idea what you're now." And again, that's, you know, at this point it's 20 years ago now, but I mean, just one of those things where, like, I don't think kids have the same. They don't frame it the same nowadays, and maybe that's a good thing. I mean, maybe it is, but just. To me, it was always like, I just always think about him saying that. He ended up going to Alabama, by the way, and winning the national championship and won a Super Bowl for the Seahawks. But it's one of those things where, like, we laugh about that conversation because it was just like he had no clue. You know, he wasn't. That wasn't his thing. Whereas somebody like me, if Alabama or when Ohio State came in, it was like, okay, I got to make that decision. Like, it's not optional. That's a blue blood. That's where you go. And I'm just not. You know, that's the other piece that I think. There's parity. There's finally some parity because there's money involved, but it's also just kind of. It's also the piece of it that makes me sad is like the old blue bloods, the Nebraskas of the world. I mean, they may never be. I saw a TikTok the other night that there was top 5 programs that will never win another national championship.
I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they listed Nebraska, and it's just like for guys our age, that is like, I mean, it's blasphemous to even say that because it's like.
Yeah.
I mean,
we live in a world where Indiana can win it and Nebraska cannot.
Yeah. Or James Madison can make the playoffs, or
Yes.
and again, no disrespect to them because they play really good ball, but it's just, we're in the twilight zone of college football in certain aspects of it. And there's a part of me that, I'm kind of here for it. I kind of like it because it's different, but also it's just like there's a lot of Saturdays where I'm just scratching my head going, how did that happen? How did they, how did Team X lose to Team Y? Well, part of it's because the payroll was better, or the whatever the case may be. There's just, there's some things that are level in the field that makes it exciting. But yeah, it's definitely different.
I know this. I'm about to be talking about a very select few players, right? But I am curious, kind of like, I don't know, if I put myself in the mindset of a football player back in the day. You go into college, and probably one of the most important things is your education. But if it's more towards the football side, it's okay, who can develop me and get me to the NFL? Well, ask yourself this: why do you want to get developed and go to the NFL? Well, we know everybody loves, if you're playing football, probably because you love football. But to answer that question, because you get paid a lot of money to play in the NFL, right? These days, you have a select few that the second they're done with high school, they get that lot of money. There are high school kids that have never played a down of college football getting paid $12 million, $3 million a year, $4 million a year, and they get that money. And it's just like, well, I take myself back to 17, 18 years old. Somebody hands me $4 million at that age. It would take a lot to keep me motivated to keep growing as a person, as a football player. It just would. And I know that's a very small percentage. I completely understand that, but that's just one thought I've always had in the back of my mind. And Jamie, I wanted to bring this up to you too. Something I know as close to firsthand as you can possibly get. One of the things about agents is I know that this past transfer portal cycle, there were agents calling teams about players and asking these teams, let's call him John, saying, hey, I'm calling Ohio State. Hey, would you guys be interested if John hit the portal? Well, yeah, we would be. Well, how much would you offer him? This much. Well, then that agent would get on the phone and call John, who, by the way, isn't even his client. He doesn't even have, it's not his agent. But you got all these agents shopping around, convincing kids to get in the portal. And you can only imagine that this is based off of one phone call. And it's based off of the agent's hope that one phone call comes true. And then that's why you see a lot of these kids in the portal with nowhere to go. So I know I hit two different things there, but I wanted to bring that example up to you because that's kind of one of those stories I think you hear sometimes. You're like, no, somebody's exaggerating. I saw the proof this year, so I know that's not exaggerating. That is happening. It is happening.
No, that's happening. The other thing, let's go back to just a second. I think BB Coach brought it up is the thing that I would have an issue with is if I'm sitting in a meeting room and the guy next to me is making let's just say $500,000, and I'm being paid, 150, 125, but I'm playing over him or I'm starting over him. What does that do? That's the other piece of this thing that doesn't get talked about. Now, how often does that happen? Who knows, right? There's probably no statistics out there for that. But now you're talking about team culture, team dynamic, team. There's a lot in this thing that doesn't get thought about. I'll just tell you this, and we talked about this area. The NIL world is in the Tulsa area now, so we're dealing with it on the high school level. Yeah, the college level is one thing. We're dealing with NIL stuff at the high school level in Oklahoma. That's a very real, thing. So it's crazy to think of, but that's the reality. And, to your point, how many guys are getting bad advice and what's the repercussions? There are none. There's no repercussions for that street agent that gave that kid bad advice. Hey, sorry about it. Good luck to you. There's nothing. The only positive is, like, to your point, Devin, is, hey, I got him to switch, and oh, by the way, it came through, and I got 8% or 10% or 30% or whatever the number is. I got some money because of it. That's really the only positive of the thing, and that's what I worry about. I'm not, again, reiterate it. I'm not here to take the money away from the kids. I just want them to be safeguarded or protected as much as humanly possible, because we all know, whether it's Ohio State, it's OU, it's Texas, it's whoever, they're protected. They've got a room full of lawyers that make sure they're protected when they're giving the money. The collectives have the same thing. And so, again, my biggest wish and hope is that the kids are protected some way, somehow. And if that new bill does that, I'm all for it. I think it's great.
Yeah. Well, Jamie, let's kind of switch topics here a little bit. We talked about a little bit of some things we don't like in the new day and age of college football. Let's kind of switch over to the Ohio State side, man. Here recently, Ryan Day has had a lot of success on the football field, man. Took a lot of criticism, but ended up winning a national title in 24. Got that monkey off his back, as they say. Come out this year, I'm going to have like 4 or 5 first-round draft picks. Didn't end the season the way we would like, but you've seen Ryan Day lead the charge in college football in a lot of different areas. One of the areas going out getting Matt Patricia. We'll start with Chip Kelly, NFL experienced coordinator. Then he goes out and gets Matt Patricia. I would say those first 2 that he hired, I don't know that you can be more successful with them. Chip Kelly, you win a national title. Matt Patricia, #1 defense in all of college football, a historic defense,
Yes.
holds several records, since 2003 from their accolades, what they did. Goes out this year and hires Arthur Smith, who is, highly regarded in the NFL, at least from the research that I have done. You see these changes, unlimited coaches now. Kind of speak to that, man. Ryan Day as a head coach, what have you seen from him that you like from your alma mater?
I'm a big fan. I know a lot of, like you said, up until a year and a half ago, there was people, and even this year, there's people, you're always going to have that group who wants to fire the head coach, right? But I've always been a big fan, and for me, it started with, as an offensive guy, I thought he was innovative as a play caller. I thought he was he kind of, if you look at his time here, we went from having running quarterbacks with Coach Meyer to he changed it to the pro style. From a receiving standpoint, we went and got Hartline, and we changed the way to receive. We had a bunch of great athletes at the time, but we didn't have a bunch of great receivers. Well, now we've kind of made it where receivers are a big thing at Ohio State. So I love what he's done with the program. That's the positive. I think I love the off the field stuff that he does. He seems like he cares. The stuff with everything I read about Harry when that whole situation went on, the fact you listen to what Harry said about him. Very complimentary. The mental health stuff that him and his wife do, huge fan of that stuff. Again, we all love the game. We all think the game is important, but there's a piece of it that football is a very small piece of this, and I like that he seems to be that way. The thing that I would challenge him with if I was in a room with him is I feel like offensive line-wise, you brought in the Arthur Smiths, you brought in the Chips, those kinds of guys, but I think from an offensive line standpoint, overall, we've taken a step back. Now, whether that's because of money, and we have to, offensive linemen are always going to be, maybe not be at the highest pay scale, right? But it just seems like we went backwards some of that. You look at the last 2, the Michigan game 2 years ago, and then this last playoff run, the end of the season at the Big Ten, losing to Indiana, and then in the playoff game, that was the offensive line failure. And that I hate saying that as a former offensive lineman. I feel like a traitor a little bit, but that's the reality is we didn't play very well. And so I would challenge them, you brought in Arthur Smith. He has a history and a name of being physical and creating good run game things, but we have to get back to running football. I get it, we've got Jeremiah Smith, and that's great, but not being able to run the ball has cost us a victory against a team up north 2 years ago. It cost us a run this year. I saw it in person. I was at the Miami game this year in the playoffs.
Me too.
It was, they had to hide all the sharp objects from me because it was just like, what are we doing right now? It's tough to watch that we're not more physical because forever that was one of our calling cards, was being able to run the football and be physical up front. And I just don't. Again, could it be the NIL? Could be, I guess. I feel like we talked about, we hit on it a couple times, from a development standpoint, we're not able to develop those linemen the same manner, and they don't stick around. We're not putting enough money into it, whatever the case may be. There's an opportunity there to fix that piece of it, and I think if we do that, I think we'll be unstoppable. And we're pretty unstoppable as it is, but I just think if you look, the other thing is you look around college football, the teams with the best O lines are the teams that are, Indiana. They had a really good offensive line, made it look easy. So
yeah,
but yeah, big fan of his for sure.
Yeah, I know you got something to say about this offensive line talk you're hearing.
Well, Jamie, it is, on the message boards and on the show, it is the number one question. And I tell everybody when things are going well, the quarterback's great, the running back's great. Nobody says, man, that right guard had a hell of a game. They just don't say it. But when things go bad, the O-line gets the blame. And as we know, there's so much more to it than just the O-line played bad. So as you watch that, what things were you seeing that led to that outcome?
Well, and here's the other thing that gets left. It's easy to say, it's easy to blame, because the coaches always catch the blame, right? Hey, that was they called a terrible game. I think we're running into a situation, Will's heard me say this a bunch in our game day group chats or texts, that, those offensive coordinators, whether it's Hartline, it's Ryan Day, it's whoever, at some point when we can't move the ball, they're just trying to see what'll work. They're just throwing stuff against the wall, and we're getting stuffed, and we can't move the ball, and we can't protect, and we can't get more than 3 yards of carry. So as the play caller, what do you do? There's not a whole lot on that. There's not a lot on that play sheet for third and long. That. There's just not. So I think that's part of the issue. Like I said, I think we've got a talented group of kids. I really do. I think those guys are good players and they're experienced guys. I just think there's something missing. What that is, I wish I knew but I'm not there. Is it in the meeting rooms? Is it a paralysis by analysis? They're thinking too much. I don't know what it is, but there's something, because the talent level doesn't match the on-field production. And individually, they're all, you look at PFF grades, and we can debate that whole thing as much as we want, but those kids are highly rated. We've got highly rated players playing the positions, and again, experienced kids. And I just think, again, I don't know if it's scheme. I don't know, if they're thinking too much, if they're not calm. I don't know. But there's something that we're missing that, I think it's something small, but I think we could take a big jump if we fix the offensive line. And again,
Jamie,
I hate saying that. It makes me sick to even admit that. I wish I could blame it on another group, another position group, but I just think, I think there's an opportunity there.
We talked about that for about 2 weeks straight after the Miami game, because I went to the Miami game as well and was just like, man, what is going on here? But I'm going to throw you under the gun a little bit, Jamie. I got to ask you a question, because this is bringing up an old topic here. I know we've moved past it and we're in the spring ball onto this, but just want to know, I want your opinion as well. You got some experience, all that stuff. The Brian Hartline situation, him leaving before the playoffs, he was the offensive coordinator, but he decided to stick around and be the offensive coordinator. Number one, do you think that was the right decision to do? If he wanted to stick around, do you let him stick around? Or what do you think about that situation? Does a move like that cause a little bit of chaos inside of a locker room and with a team? Or is it more of a, hey, man, this is college football now, suck it up and get on the field and win the football game?
Well, and obviously we're all guessing at this point, right? You know what you hear and those kinds of things. But I think if he wanted, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I want to say he stayed through the bowl game, or through the playoff game. But didn't they say that Dave was going to call the plays?
He did call the plays.
Yeah. Okay. That's the part that I don't understand on it. And again, Ryan Day is a great play caller. That's what he made. That's how he made his name. He's very good at that. But it also, he hadn't been calling it all year. And I know what he says about, hey, it's kind of a group effort and those kinds of things. Those kinds of situations, in a game like the Miami game or the Indiana game, there's obviously an issue and there's something going on, because if you look at the big games last year, you look at Texas, You look at the Indiana game, look at the Miami game. What did we score? What was the high? 14 or 17 in those 3 games?
Yeah.
You know, there's obviously something broke. I don't measure, you know, and again, like most Ohio State fans, I expect us to beat the Purdue's, the Michigan States, even Indiana. Like I just don't, you know, Rutgers, Maryland. Those are warm-up games. But when the money's on the line, we have to have something that we can do. And it just seems we seem really disjointed in all the big games. So I would say, yeah, I think it's less than ideal. I don't understand him taking that job personally. I mean, I don't. Again, that's easy for me to say, not being offered the head job at UCF. Yeah. But it's one of those things where I don't understand. I think if he would have stuck around, there would have been a better opportunity for him than that. But also, you are in Florida. You know, there's a great fertile recruiting ground. There's no state tax. There's a sunny weather. There's a lot to love about it. I just didn't understand it. But also, I didn't understand if you're going to stick around, why they didn't let him continue to call it. But maybe, again, like I said, you know, we didn't have a high output point-wise in any of the big games. So is there something bigger going on? That's the part I would love. To me, that's the $1 million question.
Yeah, I got you. VB, Coach, anything on that? I got one more question, then we'll get to Super Chats. What you got on that, VB?
Yeah, let me run this by a little bit and tell me what you think. And this is me being an O-line guy. And I've been both an offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator at the high school level. When I watch the Ohio State offense, I see an offense that was being run by a quarterback and a wide receiver. And there were times where I thought, hey, that's a 7 or 8 man box. Like, you're trying to run and you're letting the backside end go, and he's got an overhang linebacker. So that end he don't care. He's coming. And I was like, do they not understand? They're too smart. They're way smarter than I am in football. So I just kept going back to, it was a quarterback and a wide receiver that were calling the offense. And that's why I really like the hire of Smith, because I don't think he has that type of mentality. And really, ultimately, at the end of the day, the thing that I always say about a Ryan Day team is, what is their identity on offense? When it's 3rd and 2, what are they going to do? And your teams that are great, we know what they're going to do. We knew what Indiana was going to do. We knew,
sure.
Whatever. And your identity doesn't have to be smash mouth. I mean, we saw for years, what's his name there at Texas Tech and stuff with the air raid offense. They had an identity though, and so they scored points. And they'd lose to Oklahoma, but they'd lose 45-35, and stuff. So I don't know. I just don't see what I would call that strong offensive identity when I watch Ohio State play. And it gets to what you alluded to. It's a grab bag thing where they're pulling stuff out and throwing it against the wall and seeing what sticks. And I think that we got to see that.
I think, here's the other thing too, is it's tough when you're down 3 and you got to drive the ball and get either a field goal or you got to score the winning touchdown, and you don't feel confident with anything, and you don't have something you can hang your hat on. The other thing I would challenge them with is, again, times have changed to a degree, but I played with a Heisman Trophy tailback that, oh, by the way, we had a top 10 pick at tight end and a top 10 pick at receiver, and handing the ball off and being able to run the ball for 5-6 yards pop made it really easy to throw, deep balls to Terry Glenn. I mean, there's some of that stuff is yin and yang, right? And I just think that, again, are they trying to keep guys happy? Are they trying to, what are they trying? Like, I just feel like there's something that everybody's missing. The other thing is too is, and again, I say it again, love Ryan Day, love what he's done with the quarterbacks and the receivers. But if you've noticed, since he took over as OC and even as the head man especially, we don't run the quarterback at all. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are plenty of times where there is a quarterback run to be had or even a scramble. C.J. Stroud, I love him. I think he's a great quarterback. But how many times did everybody jump up and down and scream at the TV for C.J., just take off running, you're going to gain 15 yards because they're trying to cover our receivers down the field. Like, there's nobody in front of you. And He'd throw it, he'd force something, he would throw it in the dirt, he would throw it out of bounds, whatever. I just think that, so to me, I feel like they're being coached that way. Hey, don't take off running. Don't go, try to throw it to a guy. And that concerns me because, to your point, we don't have anything else that we're hanging our hat on for sure. So if you're going to tell the quarterback to not scramble and not gain yards that way, we might be in a bad spot.
Dude, that's been the biggest, after the Miami game, after the season, that's been the biggest talking point. And that's also one of the biggest talking points to the small percentage of fans that do not want Julian Sain to be our starting quarterback. But we watched him run last year. He's capable of doing it. You watch his high school film. But anyway, Jamie, one last question for you. We'll get to these super chats. Got a couple of them tonight. But as far as this upcoming season goes, you were at the Miami game. I was at the Miami game as well. There was several Ohio State fans. They saw the offensive line, and they were like, hey, man, we better go in the portal and get offensive linemen. Well, Jamie, if I were to tell you that we were rolling into this year with 4 of those same 5 offensive linemen that you saw at the Miami game, or actually we got 6 of those same offensive linemen that would be combined for the starting unit this year, were Buckeye fans right? Do you think they should have went in the portal, or do you think that all the experience that we now have on that offensive line, because a lot of those same guys were on the national title team, won us a national title, Austin Cereville, Luke Montgomery, Carson Hinsman, they were there. So does that experience kind of override that, kind of, either break Buckeye fans' hearts or give us a little bit of hope here? What you got for us?
No, I think, honestly, there's a part of me that believes that the hire of Arthur Smith was based on who was coming back. That they felt like we could run the ball and be a different team physically with, you said just a second ago, a wide receiver was calling the plays. Hartline, and again, I love him. He's part of the brotherhood. But at the end of the day, he was a receiver. And I just feel like let's get back to a guy with some toughness, a guy that demands it. The other thing that gets lost in this a little bit is Arthur Smith is a guy that Vrabel, he called plays for Braves before he became a head coach. There's a toughness there, obviously.
Yes.
I just think there's some pieces that I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise. I think there's something bigger at work, hopefully. And like I said, I'm a big believer in the group we have. I really am. I think the thing to be concerned about is that they got a couple guys out of the portal, but those guys aren't going to be there till the summer. I'm not a fan of that part. If you're getting guys, even if you're getting them for depth, even if you're getting them for that kind of thing, bring them in so they can come through spring ball, so they can get, I don't care who we sign, get a couple guys out of the portal that can be there for the spring, can build some camaraderie, can understand the system, can understand, the expectation. Because the other thing is it's a different monster at Ohio State. The expectations are different. We talked about it a couple times. We're just not going to accept anything but good football. And so that's the part that I'm more worried about with the portal and with the old linemen and that kind of thing. I don't understand that piece. And then the other thing, we lost 5. That's tough. We lost 5 and we signed 2. And I don't know how many high school kids we signed, but losing 5 that have been in your system for a little bit, that's a problem. So
yeah. VP Coach, any final thoughts here, and we'll dive in to some of these super chats.
Just one thing that I was asked a lot: what was it like to play next to Orlando Pace?
Man, we don't have enough time.
I only asked that because, as I played D3 college ball, and it was always this thing on Sunday to get our grades. And then, for me, it was on a note card. Hey, here's what you did, whatever. And then I'd think, oh, man, I got to beat what's his name next week. I can't be behind him. You could have played out of your mind, and you weren't going to beat the dude next to you. To me, I don't know how I would have handled that.
Well, so 2 things I'll tell you. The first thing is my first year there, we have Corey and Orlando. Orlando was a freshman, and just watching both of them it's hard to put into words, right? Because it just an amazing. I mean, those two were amazing together. But the second thing is, and Will always tells me this, is he says that. So you guys have asked me about the O-line a couple times. Will always tells me that I don't judge the O-line correctly because of who I played next to, because I played next to Orlando. And it's true. I mean, the thing I can tell you is there was times in the meeting room where Orlando would do something and it would just be quiet. You could have heard a pin drop because it was just like, how did he do that? Like, how did he do that? Like, that doesn't fit, like a guy that big and that, tall and everything. Like, how did he do that? Like, and again, it just, it's cool. Again, for me, playing with Eddie was, special. Locking for Heisman was extremely special. But playing next to Orlando was the same. I mean, it was, especially because I know, we all know if you played the position, you know how hard it is to do certain things. And he made it look so easy. But also his work ethic and his accountability and his attention to detail and that stuff, like that's what makes him special and made him special. So yeah, it was special. That's the best word I can give you. It was also unreal at times, but yeah.
Isn't it wild how 99% of the time when you talk about somebody successful, they seem to have a good work ethic. They pay attention to the details. It's weird, isn't it? It's like, how do you succeed in life? Well, I got a little list for you here. Not a super chat here, but I wanted to bring something up, man. He wants to know who's the toughest player you ever played against at Ohio State. I mean, on the offensive side of the ball, you mentioned a couple: Eddie, Orlando Pace, Dudley. Played Bobby, right? Bobby, the quarterback, right? Glenn, obviously. But listen to the defensive side of the ball here, man. Vrabel, Finks, Fickle. So you've played with some dudes, man. So answer this question, and maybe I don't know, that list of guys you played with on that team. I mean, those are some Buckeye legends, my dude.
Yeah, it's crazy. I would say internally the toughest. This will come as no surprise to most Buckeye fans, but internally the toughest was Vrabel without question. Him or Fickle are 1-2 for me. As far as playing against other guys, Dana Howard was a Butkus winner at Illinois. He was extremely tough. Trent Zinkowitz was a Cleveland kid that played at that school up north. He was extremely tough for me. I struggled with him a little bit. There was a guy, we played Washington back then, and there was a guy named Steve Hoffman who was my welcome to college football moment was him because it was just embarrassing. But yeah, man, again, that's the thing that I think other people don't realize too. And our coaches used to joke about it, but they would say, hey, that guy's on scholarship too. I mean, we didn't duck anybody back then. We played against big time talent, and yeah, I was fortunate. I played with a lot of amazing guys, but and then the other thing was played against Al Wilson at Tennessee. My last game, there was a young kid, not a very good quarterback, but a kid that had a little success named Peyton Manning at that time. That was decent. Ended up having a little bit of a pro career, but
a little bit.
But yeah, man, those guys. I mean, again, I think our toughest competition was the guys that we lined up against.
Yeah, I guarantee it, man.
Yeah, the guy. The funny thing is, I think about my senior year, guys that were redshirted. They ended up being first-round picks. It's just, I don't know. It's just funny. It just makes me laugh.
Yeah. You brought up a point. I got to ask you this, man, and sorry, for asking you this, but I just need to know, man. It's very important. Are the team up north cheaters?
Short answer, yes. Yeah, it's here's what's funny. We actually had a guy come in from there's a software program for scouting high school football that we use, breaking down film and stuff. And the guy that came in last week or 2 weeks ago now, I guess, he's from Michigan, and he just outside of Detroit. And so he found out, and I was giving him a hard time. He goes, listen, because you're talking to the wrong guy. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, A, they're cheaters. B, I hate them. He goes, as a matter of fact, I hate every school in Michigan. And I was just like, my guy, right there. What else? Is there anything we can give you? I mean, I was ready to give him the world.
How to make the sale.
Yeah. Here's the other thing, too. And this is something that, let's just back up real quick. I think, did they cheat? Absolutely. We all know that as more time goes past and more things come out, it just gets uglier and uglier, right? But the thing that I will say, where they didn't cheat, and this is where the rivalry flipped for a little bit, was if you look at what their O-line and D-line became in a 3 or 4 year span, that to me, the cheating was helped flip it. But I was at 2 of the games where they beat us up. Physically, they beat us up. And that's hard to swallow. And that's why I guess it's probably more of a sore subject for me, is because it's like I watched what they did to flip it, and it was basically just all up front. And I hate that, because we have the same resources, the same thing that they do. So anyway.
Yeah, no, they had a offensive line and defensive line, that's for sure. They get the credit there, man. B. Moses, thanks for the $5. Jamie Sumner, that name brings back great memories. Thanks for coming on, brother. Go Bucks. Thanks, B.
Thank you.
Doodah, man, thanks for the 50, man. You're always overly generous. We appreciate that, man. Great show as always. Jamie, do you ever get the chance to go back to the shoe to see a game? OH.
I do. I say that this last year I didn't get to go, but I normally go back to I'll go back to the versus the team up north when it's at home. So I'll get back every couple years, then I'll pick a game, before this last season, pick a game that I try to get to. But yeah, I try to. Not enough, not near enough. I love my time. I need, the other thing is so my wife, when the first 3 games that she went to the 14 Michigan game at home, which that was a crazy game, and she got to experience. That was when JT broke his leg, and we're walking out of the stadium, and everybody's like down, and she's like, "You won. What happened?" I'm just like, "We just lost our quarterback," and we knew we had something special, right? But she went to that one. She went to the 16 game, the 18 game. Well, then they don't play us in 20, so we didn't go to that game. Well, then we go back in 22, and we all know what happened then. It was horrible.
Yeah.
She finally figured out what the other side of it was like. She's like, "Oh, this is what it feels like." I'm like, "Yeah, it sucks. It's not fun." So I say all that to say I need to get back to another game at home against them when we win, because I got to get this taste out of my mouth. So
yeah, for sure. Steely, thanks for the $1.99, man. Thanks for coming on the show, Jamie Sumner. Go Bucks. Yeah, we appreciate you for sure, man. Appreciate all the insight. Appreciate the conversation with you. I'll try to put in a word, man. It sounds like we need to get you maybe teaching these offensive linemen at Ohio State a little something, get you and VB coach in the door there. And what I look for in offensive line, what I want out of my offensive line is at least 1 penalty a game for after the whistle contact. That's what I want. I've said that since I started this podcast. I was like, if the offensive line comes out and we get like 2 or 3 penalties because our O linemen are driving people into the ground 30 seconds after the whistle, then I'm going to get excited about our offensive line. That's what I'm trying to see.
You can live with an aggressive penalty, right? The holds and the false starts and some of that crap. I mean, that drives you nuts. But the aggressive stuff, I'm with you. Here's the deal, or at least push the envelope. It's the old Bobby Bowden, right? Play through the echo of the whistle. Play nasty and play. I saw, I didn't even bring it up. I didn't think to bring it up, but Orlando, I guess, is back helping in some kind of role. He's I guess they hired him.
Really?
I don't know. I saw it the other day online. I don't know exactly what his role is, but it's like somebody said online, like if that's the case, that's a good sign. But who knows what it is, or who knows exactly what his say is going to be. But he definitely knows a thing or two about playing that way for sure.
Yeah.
Although I don't think Orlando. Yeah, Orlando would probably struggle because he wouldn't understand why you couldn't kick step flip your hips, turn, and pick up that inside rush because he did it. Whereas nobody else did that. Whatever. And because I had a player that played for the Colts. He was the third string quarterback for the Colts for a couple of years. And so I really started listening to Howard Mudd and some of his teachings on the O-line. And he taught techniques that I sat there and I was like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. And he said, if you're sliding out and you get beat across your face, don't turn in. He said, spin. Take a spin. And I was like, what? I'm like, I would completely lose sight of that guy. Like, what are you talking about? And he said, well, that damn quarterback's going to be rolling outside anyway. So when you spin, you're going to spin right into where he's rolling. And I just thought, yeah, you can say that. We can say it, but it takes and I realized he's coaching NFL offensive tackles. They were able to do those things. So.
Well, even in that, here's the other thing is even in that, there's levels to it. Even, there's like the journeyman offensive tackle, there's the mid-level, and then there's the Jonathan Ogdens and Opaces and Walter Jones and those guys. If you want to see stuff like that, there's some interesting clips of Kelsey spinning out on stuff at center, spinning back and blocking guys.
Yeah.
Instead of cutting them off. Just crazy stuff. But yeah.
One of the things I've always been curious about, and through my time here and getting to talk to people, I think there might be some behind the scene things here, but I've always been very curious why Ohio State does not get a little bit of help from LaCharles Bentley. He's a pretty good offensive lineman who that's all the dude does now is literally train offensive linemen. That he goes around the nation and you see Oregon using him. You see all these other schools using him. And I'm like, dang, man, let's get LaCharles in some capacity. I thought it was going to happen. Was it last year? Yeah, like they were getting close to a little agreement. Something blew up there. But either way, man.
I think he's involved a little. I just think it's one of those things too, though. Do you want to work with somebody that's working with the Oregons and the,
Yeah.
If I'm at Ohio State, hey, I want an Orlando Pace that's at Ohio State, period.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And somebody like LaCharles T, he's used to running the show. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And you go in there, he ain't going to be, if he's just coming to help, he's not running the show. So
I think that's the biggest point. I think that's absolutely the biggest thing. It's not that he doesn't know O-line and he's not a great coach of it because Taylor Decker trains with him in the offseason. I've seen the videos. It's amazing the stuff that he does. But you can't bring a dude like that in and he be the assistant O-line coach like that.
Yeah.
And if he misses, if you're the head O-line coach and he missed the first 3 days of spring ball and then he shows up on the fourth day and he tells the kid, hey, you're doing that wrong. Do it this way. And that's the way you've taught that kid for, that. And I always say sometimes you can have too many chiefs, especially on the O-line. And if we're not all on the same page, because there's 1,000 ways to do that.
Well, that's the other piece talking about what's going on there. My understanding is at the end there was four different people helping with the O-line.
Yes.
That might be the problem. Will and I talked about it. That might be part of it is now what's the breakup? What is each guy responsible for? And what is, again, we don't know that part of it, but to your point, hey, there's too many chefs in the kitchen, it ain't gonna taste very good. And that might be in this world that we're in with analysts and 2 and 3 O-line guys and just who knows.
Yeah, dude. They the 2 offensive line assistants the year prior were head offensive line coaches. And then they came in to be assistants. So that's always been a topic of discussion as well. But Jamie, we appreciate the heck out of you coming on the show, man. VB coach, you got any final words, any final thoughts for Jamie? And then Jamie will get yours and close this thing out.
No, I thought today was a great show. So much information, and I want to do it again. So,
yeah. Jamie, any final words for Buckeye Nation?
Man, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for this fall. Let's do what we do and win some more football games and hopefully raise another trophy at the end of all of it. And go Bucks. Yeah.
Heck yeah, man. Great show. Phenomenal stuff. I loved it. We'll have to get you back on here sometime. But on that note, guys, appreciate all the super chats. Appreciate the support. You guys know what to do, man. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well. Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, same thing. And also, when we're done, shoot us a little comment under the videos when it's not live. That helps out as well. But on that note, we appreciate you guys. We love you guys. Go Buckeyes. OH.
IO.